Hi there, my name is Oli Knight. I'm Head of Quant Research and Trading at Harrington Starr. I'm here today at Quant Strats in New York to talk with the industry's brightest and best. Hopefully have some really interesting conversations, which I'm sure you'll enjoy.
I think one of my first questions is, from my understanding of your background, you don't come from a traditional, shall we say, target finance background in terms of the degree you studied and also your PhD. So perhaps you can tell us a bit about that and also how that academic journey somehow ends you up working in the world of systematic fixed income.
Absolutely. Yeah, so at the time that I started my career in finance, there were a lot of PhDs coming into the field. It was finance was relatively new at the time, so there weren't very many trained quantitative finance people. Many of my colleagues and peers and managers are from physics, math, engineering, which is a bit of a change from today, but I'd say we still do hire people straight out of the hard sciences because they have the right hard skills and the finance skills they're able to pick up as they go.
Excellent. I see. I'm sure there'll be many candidates or prospective candidates kind of approaching the end of their PhD or a master's program or something like that. I'm curious if you now reflect on your own journey, if there's any advice or anything maybe that you wish you could have learned at that point earlier on.
Well, I think I would say I went into finance for exactly the right reason, which is that I wanted my work to be practical and I wanted to see the practical consequences of my work, which was really missing in my PhD program. And if you can be driven by that, by really making an impact in the real world, then you're going to find finance fascinating and super motivating. If you just want to solve theoretical problems, it's probably not the place for you.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah, increasingly what we're seeing is young PhD graduates or people in their, let's say, early or late 20s, they're coming in with a very different mindset than maybe people used to. They're being taught to value incremental progress and not come up with very original ideas, but just, work off of a lot of papers that are there already. And I think that is, detrimental for quant. And one of the things we have to do is shake them out of the mindset. They don't have their advisors here anymore to, micromanage them or, guide them. And here they have to do completely original research, and they have to be risk takers. Unlike in academia, where risk taking is increasingly frowned upon.
Yes.
And there's a lot of proliferation of conformity in terms of how grants are awarded. In quant, you need to be a risk taker in order to find novel alpha, in order to survive. So I think it's difficult, and most quants take at least 6 months to a year to just get out of that academic mindset and learn how to be a little bit more bold and a little bit more innovative, so to speak.
There's no textbook for quant investing, right?
Yes.
It's a space where there's very little you can learn about from other people, just because of the nature of the industry. But so we're looking for people who have an open mind and who are always looking to learn new ideas and test them and see if they work. Because there's two parts to this job. It's an engineering job like any other code engineer, but unlike any other code engineer, 8 out of 10 projects fail.
Yeah. Sure.
So having that resiliency and creativity to come up with new ideas to test and be willing to not be disappointed is very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very much involved with mentorship, right? With CWIM, we do mentorship. In general, just being being an advocate for women, and this doesn't just apply to women; it also applies to men, right? And I know a lot of amazing men who are like an ally to women, right? And I feel like more people should do that. It's I know it's a sensitive topic about being like a male ally and all that, but as women, I can tell you, we appreciate if a senior manager and who is a man approaches and says, "How can I help you?"
Yeah.
Something like that really opens the door for. Put your hand out, and guess what? In return, we will, we don't want to hesitate to ask for help.
Yeah.
So, my suggestion would be irrespective of you're a man or you're a woman, reach out to, junior women.
Yeah.
At your work, again, something as simple as, hey, how's your day going, right?
Yeah.
What are you working on right now?
Yeah.
Can I give you some career advice?
Yeah.
Right? As a mentee, you should be actively seeking but it's a both-way street, right? So it's a two-way street. So if the mentor is not responding to the mentee, then at some point they're like, okay, this is not working out.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you a bit about recruitment from your perspective and the challenges of recruitment in fund research. How would you describe your experience as a hiring manager trying to find kind of strong candidates?
Yeah, it's you're right. It's definitely a challenge. We can for an open junior role, we can get hundreds of applicants or maybe 1,000 applicants, and they all look great on paper. And almost maybe not all of them, but like 80-90% of them have the technical skills and the quantitative skills that they'll need to succeed. But like I said, like finding that person with just the right motivation, like being motivated to be in finance for the long term, not just to make money, but to solve practical problems, to get your hands dirty. And I would say the other really big differentiator is like, can a quant become, part business person? Can a quant learn to speak to senior managers or external stakeholders, clients, investors? They usually don't have experience with that, but in the interview process, you can sometimes get a sense of who's going to be able to rise to the really senior ranks of quant.
Has there been any themes that have stood out in your successful, qualification and finding candidates in terms of maybe any kind of core attributes they have or personality styles, or has it really just been a random collection of different individuals who make it work for different reasons?
Yeah, as you know, there's a lot of noise in the recruitment process. I've been surprised by many candidates in both directions. But if you can see a spark of entrepreneurialism in a candidate, that's a great sign. I think a lot of quants tend to be, give me a problem and I'll solve it. But if you can find a quant who is looking for problems and has ideas for new problems to be solved, that's great. Like I said, communication, motivation. Can you communicate your PhD to me in a way that would make sense to me being outside of your field? That's another really good one.
Excellent.
Yeah, some people might be quicker to adapt than others. Certainly, we work a lot with people who are already in academia, and we've seen this. Some of the professors, we have a professor in cosmology from Princeton who's working with us, for instance, who's on our board of advisors. He's the way he thinks about problem solving is already, in such a way that is very in line with our culture. So he's made several innovative discoveries in cosmology, and he carries that same critical thinking, first principles mindset to quant. And so it's certainly possible to do. And I do hope that more younger PhD graduates can also do that. I think one other thing I'll add that PhD graduates have to unlearn is they are taught certain kinds of mathematics, such as most modern statistics is based on this notion of equilibrium, right? Things have to converge, and they have to break away from a lot of those mindsets in markets which are more chaotic, noisy, and non-stationary than any data set they'll encounter in physics or any other area. Yeah. So I think that's the other thing they have to break out of. So it's certainly possible, but it takes time. Usually it takes some people it might take a few weeks, some people a few months.
Understood.
There's a lot to be said about being in the right team. You can have a very different experience working on two different teams at some of our competitors. Lazard is more collaborative because we have no silos, no walls, so the experience is going to be a lot more uniform. Yeah. And in my case, I've actually switched my team at Lazard twice in 3 years. Interesting. So I started on another quant team we have focused on US small caps, and then I moved to the fundamental team, and then I moved to my current team, which is the global all equity quantitative investing. So the ability to change teams is much greater at Lazard than I think some of our competitors because the teams work together.
First of all, going back to something like earlier on in the journey, right? You made that transition yourself from kind of very intense rigor within academia going into something in working at MBS on the financial markets. A bit of a theme, some of the conversations today has been about that transition, from either whether it's doing a rigorous master program or a PhD or something like that, and maybe the transferable skills or the common themes that occur will make that transition well.
The only common theme is to think from first principles. Think for yourself.
Yes.
Question everything.
Yeah.
So the entire flow in the industry is the training. This is now looking backwards and trying to figure out how I'm generating alpha. And the only thing I can attribute it to is all of finance, all of economics is based on an apprenticeship model.
Right.
You learn from someone,
Yep.
he's your boss, he retires, you take his job, you keep doing the same thing over and over again. And so the entire ecosystem does the same thing over and over again, and they have behavioral biases. And if you think from first principles about the asset class and what's the correct way to invest in it, you will come up with a different solution. And that's kind of what I do is I'm not looking for a different solution. I'm just starting with a clean sheet of paper in everything I do, whether it's economics, whether it's connecting money supply to asset pricing, thinking of central banks, thinking of currencies, thinking of MBS, thinking about fixed income, and now thinking about equities.
Sure.
It's all about first principles thinking. You crunch the data, you do your research, and you think about what's the right way to invest.
I mean, this is a Quant Strats event, a lot of focus on AI, which is like pretty fantastic. So, I mean, I feel like, Quant Strat, done a terrific job of, like finding like great topics which are very relevant, and great speaker lineup as well, So I think there's a lot of like sit-downs, one-on-one networking events, which is like really great because I'm meeting folks and coming across like companies that I had never heard of, right? So that's the beauty of being at an event like that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of great topics lined up.
Excellent.
Really looking forward to it. Obviously very much focused on AI, crypto, LLM space, and we are all trying to learn, right? Because it seems the space has just exploded.
Okay, and then finally, you've done your kind of panel for today. I imagine you're slightly more relaxed now. Do you have anyone who you're particularly excited to see, or any topics which maybe you're excited to dive into with kind of other people who are attending today?
Yeah, I've learned a lot about data acquisition today and various kind of new event data providers that are out there.
Yeah.
And so that was a theme. And of course, everyone's talking about AI agents. So that's...
I thought I would spare you by not asking you about that actually. But
But it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I'm going to definitely be a theme for the next 12 months, for the next Quant Strats.
The panel that I'm going to be on later is about multi-asset class opportunities, especially in alpha generation and quant signals. A big theme that I've been focusing on is, which isn't a new theme, but I think it's a dynamic area, is the relationship between equity and credit. Equity and credit should be related, and you see that they are related if you look at the most liquid equity instruments and the most liquid credit instruments. They're almost perfectly correlated. But once you go down into the less liquid part of the spectrum, you find that correlation breaks down. And so the question you might ask yourself is that the real price dynamics, or is it just some inefficiency because of lack of liquidity? And I'm a firm believer that it's liquidity and execution. So there's this sea of alpha hiding behind a wall of liquidity that just can't be accessed. But that wall is kind of eroding day by day as liquidity improves, as electronic trading improves. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to be harnessed across equity and credit.
Oh, it's been going really great.
Yeah.
Great turnout, and this is the first time I'm at this event, and I mean, it's been amazing. A lot of interesting panels.
Absolutely. AI was a focus of the conversation. I'm curious if you kind of left with a particular sentiment on that topic. It felt like there were some, similar views, but slightly different perspectives, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think like AI is like it has arrived, right? Like,
Sure.
I believe that it has been around for a while, but one of my panelists talked a lot about like crypto space, and like there's a lot of confusion around that. And it was like really enlightening to hear that. His point was like, look, guys, crypto has arrived, and it is volatile. You either accept it and move on, or you be like, okay, we're not going to participate because we don't understand the space. And I personally thought that he was very like optimistic in the crypto space, but he was trying to make a point that look, it's not all rainbow and sunshine. It comes with a lot of volatility, but once you understand the space, it's not a space that you should like completely avoid. And one of my questions for them was like, okay, in terms of asset allocation, like how do you folks think about it? I really did not get a straightforward answer because it's hard to give an answer in a space like that.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of like diversity of thoughts in my panel, which I thought was pretty fantastic.
Yes, just wrapping up an amazing day here at Quant Strats in New York. It's been a really interesting day, jam-packed full of insight from various different industry participants. Really interesting, multifaceted day. Enjoyed speaking to all of the guests, and looking forward to the next one.